Well, hey there. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Ask Dr. Hein, where I'm always interested in hearing your questions and trying to give you some answers no matter how far flung the topics are or whatever you're interested in. I'm interested in hearing them, and I'll attempt to do my best to answer them as truthfully as possible. Now, we got a question from actually a member of the Opening Minds bulletin board on my mountbaldy.com website. If you go to the homepage there, you'll see there's a link to the Opening Minds bulletin board. And this particular person wanted to know, their question was, among other things, what does remote resident viewing information look like? In particular, had we ever done any viewing on crop circles? And if so, what had we found? And it's a really good question. I thought what I would do would be to show you just what one of my very early sessions looked like. Actually, the first time I ever even heard about the idea of crop circles, because this is all the way back in 1996. I hadn't even heard of crop circles until I took this remote viewing class over at the Farsight Institute with Dr. Courtney Brown back in 1996 in Atlanta, Georgia. And one of the targets he gave us towards the end of the week was actually a crop circle. And I hadn't even heard of the term, but here's what I got in my session. I think you'll see it's really kind of interesting. This is actually my Phase 3 drawing from that session back in 1996. What the target was a picture of the 1996 spiral formation at Milk Hill, and just kind of looked like a three-armed spiral in wheat. And what I was able to draw was, you can clearly see it's a circle in some sort of background with lines going in and out of it, and what looked to be like people around the circle. And the exact target cue, if I remember correctly, was, crop circle cause of formation. Because back then we were kind of wondering, what causes these things and so forth. People really weren't sure. And so when I got this information, I also, by the way, wrote down a lot of other things in the sessions related to interesting types of energy and archetypal types of information coming through, people working something out in the field and so forth. And I didn't know really how to interpret this. Actually, this caused me to go on my first crop circle tour back in 1997 with Ron Russell. And so I'm showing you this because what it shows you is that often when you get data in a viewing session, you're really not quite sure how to interpret that. And I wasn't sure how to interpret this apart from the fact that it looked like a circle with things going in and out. I mean, my interpretation of at the time, once I saw the photo, was it showed that there were at least humanoids involved. I couldn't tell if these were people or ETs or what they were, but there clearly was a circle and some sort of energy kind of going in and out, or arrows that indicated some sort of energy. You can even see kind of mountains, hills in the background, which there are in the area there in Wiltshire. So now fast forwarding like 14 years later, it really looks like I did make target contact with the particular target. And what it actually showed is now we know that people do make many of these large circles, if not most of them now, in Wiltshire, or all the big ones that we know about. At least I haven't seen any recently that I didn't think were related to human involvement. The big ones I'm talking about, the big artistic ones. And so this seems to indicate that there were, even back then, my subconscious mind was showing me, that people are involved in making the circles. However, there's another way to interpret this. If you believe that extraterrestrials are involved in making the crop formation, maybe that's representative of extraterrestrials or some sort of joint venture or something. But it definitely shows that this is related in some way to intelligent life creating these crop formations. It's not just some sort of random discharge, some sort of plasma discharge from the upper atmosphere. It looks like people are involved. And that, so it basically shows that the viewing gives you information. What I'm attempting to show you here is that it's not always so easy to interpret it. You actually sometimes want to go to the site, but it can give you some information, which if you combine with other sources, can really be kind of interesting. And here we are. Before I'd ever even been to England, my subconscious mind is showing me some very interesting and seemingly accurate information about the causes of crop circles for me. So I hope that really just kind of interesting, showing you to answer the question from our bulletin board member. It's just that you do get information about some of these topics. Things we've looked at include, life on Mars, or targeting to go inside a picture of a UFO. Actually, the target would be the picture of the UFO, but you actually in your subconscious would want to actually go to it and see what was inside. We've done that from time to time. But when you get the results back, unless you can actually get some sort of feedback about it, you're never quite sure were you right about it or not, how to interpret the information. I mean, this is true of any sort of scientific discovery. The information may be present to you, but you don't know how to interpret it because it's so new, it's different. You almost don't have the vocabulary to describe it. So really the challenge with viewing is not so much getting target contact, it's how to interpret the ideas you're getting, putting them into the vocabulary that we currently have, and making sense of it. You can imagine if we gave a laptop computer of today to someone 100 years ago, they wouldn't even know how to talk about it in the way that we would understand, because it wouldn't even be part of their conceptual framework. And this is true with many of these subtle energy types targets, or targets that are looking at things that are a little beyond what our society considers to be real, at least in terms of evidence. And so you kind of have a challenge in terms of describing it. And so this is just an interesting example. And so what we knew back then, at least from this particular session, is humanoids or humans are involved in making crop circles or have something to do with it. Anyway, I hope that answers your question. I think thanks a lot. It's a very interesting question. We could talk about this a lot in terms of other topics, but I think you can see that there is a challenge of describing it and then making sense of it. The viewing session gives the information. It's a question of how you interpret it and your own ability to understand and make sense of it in terms of your own framework. But it's always a very interesting experience, and always something that I've found always to be very worthwhile. Okay, thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.